And the thing is
Lord, I'm separated.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Yoon, and in today's video I will be once again trying to say my thoughts on the booktok books I read. So my thoughts on it haven't changed. However, I kept struggling to be articulate and concise in what I thought for the books, specifically The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. So I ended up just writing my thoughts down, and hopefully that is the best way. But before we get into that one, I'm gonna talk about Good Girl Bad Blood. That one I rated a 4-star. Also, this has been a few weeks since I not only read the books but also filmed and edited the vlog, so a lot of details are, you know, not there anymore. But for Good Girl Bad Blood, I rated it 4 stars because I did really enjoy it. It was really well written. I really enjoyed how the author was able to keep the constant high stakes situation consistent throughout the entirety of the book. I really liked and was impressed by how she managed to keep it really stressful, really tense, really dramatic. And yeah, especially since the book is like 400 pages. And speaking on 400 pages, I was also really impressed that not only was the constant tension there, but the fact that with a 400-page book, it was a surprisingly fast-paced story and plot. One thing I realized when I read These Violent Delights is that I'm very, very bad at reading slow-paced books, but Good Girl Bad Blood, fast-paced enough to, and it was entertaining to keep it through. I didn't feel like I was missing anything, but it was just very well plotted and well paced. And I also really liked how in this book we're dealing with a lot more serious issues, repercussions that have occurred in the first book. So for example, we're dealing with Pip and her own internal struggle of having to come to terms and accept the actions that she's committed in the first book. Because like I said in one of my older videos about A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, I personally was uncomfortable with the very unethical, in my opinion, decisions that Pip took. And near the end of the book, we feel like all's well. However, in the sequel, we find out that all's not really well, and that Pip is actually having to deal with the fact that she's done those actions, and the fact that she can once again so easily fall back into doing it if it means solving another mystery. So yeah, I really liked how darker the story got. I'm really liking Pip's character development. I find it really, really intriguing, and I'm actually really excited to see where it goes, especially in the third book. The thing is, the third book, I got a major spoiler, and the reason is because, also a word of advice, if you're gonna read this series, really read it one after the other, because I read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, I want to say last year, and I read it last year like, also I don't have the book out here because my bookshelf's a little crazy and I didn't feel like yanking it out. But where was I? Oh, so I got it major spoiled because I ended up reading Good Girl Bad Blood last month, so it's been a little more over half a year, and obviously I don't remember all the characters. I really only remembered Pip and Ravi, and then vaguely the other characters. But oh, so because of that, I did look up the characters again to try and remember who was who, what was their role in the first book. And in my research of looking up a character, I feel like I got a huge plot point spoiled for me for the third book. So obviously the mystery and the surprise in that story has been gone, but I am still very curious to see where Pip's character goes. And yeah, the book that will take up most of this video, Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Well, I really struggled with trying to articulate my thoughts in words because I am both not part of the LGBTQ community, nor am I part of the Latina community. So I don't know how like appropriate it is for me to comment on the representation here, but I figured I might as well just share my thoughts on it. So first of all, on the book and story itself, oh right, I rated this a 4 out of 5. On the story itself, I think it was really well written. I found it very emotional, very impactful. Basically just those two things, but it was very well done in that aspect. I did find it interesting how in the first 9 to 10 pages of the book, the writing did feel very juvenile and very plain, and definitely not on par with what I was expecting, both from a very beloved book on BookTok, but also from the very concept of the book, which is, you know, centered on an old Hollywood star. So obviously I'm going to expect a lot of glamorous writing, a lot of fancy writing. And so it was quite a bit of a shock and a little jarring to see that I wasn't getting that from the start. But then I did find it very interesting how the minute Evelyn came in, it seemed as if the writing shifted to match her presence. And I really liked Evelyn's character. It really showed her flaws, but also because it made her feel a lot more alive. I feel like when in the terms of her being bi, again, not saying if it's good or bad or not, but for me it felt really respectful. It felt like the author knew what they were talking about and they weren't relying on stereotypes or just like misconceptions and fixing them or anything like that. But I just thought it was really well, it just meshed really well with the story and really added to the emotional impact to Evelyn's whole journey between wanting to keep her fame but also wanting to keep the love of her life in her life, and also her own internal struggle that she did have with her bisexuality. So I really liked that part. I thought that was really well written, really well delivered. And however, I can't say I was the biggest fan on the Latino representation. The biggest and most obvious blaring part of the story that stood out to me on terms of that was how Evelyn was the only main Cuban character, when she, out of every character in the book, is the most sexualized and the most objectified, and so much emphasis is put on her breasts, and she happens to be Cuban. That for me was a problem that I did not like, because it really, I feel like this really just adds on to the very harmful stereotypes towards Latina women and just towards Latina people that exists both in Hollywood, as you can see in like TV shows, and also in real life, that people expect all Latina people to be super sexy, to be super sensual. And I just didn't like how this book was relying on that stereotype and also adding to it, because even with the love of her life, Evelyn was so objectified. It made me so uncomfortable, and I was like, wow, this is just too much. It was just very uncomfortable to read, and I didn't like the fact that, you know, that added up, because I feel like I found more of a problem with it because she was really the only character that I found to have been so objectified and so sexualized, even when she wasn't the only female character. So for me, that was like, I think it's a culmination of several aspects that I've read through Evelyn's story. So first of all, I forget that she's even Cuban. I just, you know, I ended up thinking of her just as a white woman. Okay, let me try to think of how to see it, of how to bring the dots together. So let's get the variables or something. So I forget Evelyn's even Cuban. Instead I think of her more as a white woman, which adds into the supposed point that I've seen people say that her being whitewashed is the point. However, there's also to add in the fact that we really only get one major existential or breakdown scene of Evelyn having that realization of losing her culture and essentially whitewashing herself, and adding in the fact that with how well written the main plot of her relationship with Fame, her husband, Celia, and her sexuality had, the fact that that amount of effort didn't seem to have been given to the struggle she most likely had with her Cuban identity. All those like 3 to 4 things resulted in a very weak story and what I find very weak representation of Evelyn as a Cuban woman, because in the end then we end up kind of relying on stereotypes and just very surface level aspects of Cuban culture. And the weirdest part on that too is when they run to Spain. I'll add on to that later, but on that aspect, like I said before, she really only had one major breakdown and existential crisis at the fact that she's at her realization that she's essentially whitewashed herself. And I feel like with a loss of identity and culture like that, you can't just rely on one big scene, because from what I remember, I don't remember her having a consistent enough struggle and realizations throughout the story as we have had with her struggles with her life of Fame as well as her relationships, which further kind of makes the plot feel like it's kind of treated as an afterthought. And because I feel like when you realize you've given up your cultural identity in order to fit in, I do kind of understand the loss of connection to culture and identity, and also struggling and trying to regain it, and also trying to find out exactly who I am. However, because I have some experience with having dealt with that, the fact that we only really rely on one big scene for Evelyn to realize it but then never really do anything about it felt very low effort. Because of that, there wasn't much of an impact that her story on that aspect had compared to the main point of the story. And on the third point, the third scene, I just personally found it very weird how her feeling comfortable enough and happy that she's once again fluent in Spanish was just treated as that conclusion to that whole journey, to her whole journey on that part, because she essentially also forgot a lot of the culture and traditions, not just the language. And the fact that her thinking just learning the language was enough, I don't know, because I feel like I found it weirder because they're in Spain when that happens, but she's Cuban. So and then Spain and Cuba have enough cultural differences that they shouldn't be regarded as similar, because they are different. They share the same language, but even within that language there are like deeper nuances and different nuances to the things that are catered, that are a result of history and culture. So I feel like it's just weird that they have her, and especially if she's forgotten a lot of Spanish and traditions and whatnot, I feel, do correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I feel like she would have ended up picking up Spain Spanish and not Cuban Spanish again, because, you know, she forgot it. And Spain and Cuba, I feel like, have enough differences in their Spanish that it wouldn't be the same to say she's once again fluent in Cuban Spanish. I don't know. That part just felt really weird to me. I didn't know how to take it, because it didn't have the same emotional impact or satisfaction in the conclusion to her journey. So those are my thoughts on that part. It was a little I feel like it might be a little controversial or anything like that. So, but you know, these were the thoughts I had. And then for the third book is The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. This one has no rating because I did not finish it. I am on page 59, Parisa's second chapter, and the reason for my DNF is because I could not bring myself to care about any of the characters or the plot. Nothing was engaging, nothing was intriguing, nothing was keeping my attention, and I don't know. The thing is, let me see if I can remember. So far I only really like Reina, and I'm very interested in Callum. But that's about it. And then Tristan I was only interested in because of his powers. And then everybody else I don't really care. And the thing is, I feel like the author is trying to really make sure that the characters are all different and flawed in their own way, but somehow, for some reason, to me, they all still feel kind of flat. I just could not find anything exciting or engaging in the story. And also the writing, for me, I'm not the biggest fan of, because I can see that the author, well, for me it felt like the author was trying to go for a dark and mysterious and academic style of writing to really give off the atmosphere and setting and vibes. However, for me, for some reason, the way the writing was delivered ended up kind of falling short, and it ended up feeling like the writing was trying too hard in order to deliver those vibes. The magic system is, for me, very, very confusing, because I feel like so many aspects of the magic that have already been introduced are just adding to the system, but not really helping organize exactly how the magic works. And yeah, so that's it for the Atlas 6. Basically, not into anything in this book. So no rating. Very complicated on this part, I feel like. That is it for this video. I think I tried to be short, but it ended up not working out. So that was it for my video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.